Well, it has been a fast week. When we're engaged in that is enjoyable, that which we know is pleasing to our God, time seems to have a way of passing very quickly. Or I have said of late, when you get as old as we are, time passes pretty fast. And it does. Seems like hardly we turn around until another week is gone. That's how fast our time is going and our life is going. And we're swift passengers from time to eternity. All of us are. And it little behooves us not to take seriously every day of our lives, every opportunity that we have to do right, to lift up our Lord and His teachings. We have very much enjoyed meeting some of you for the first time. Always good to meet new people in the church. Always good to come back and see people that we already know. And we thoroughly have enjoyed it. And we will leave here with good feelings about you and about the congregation, and I hope that you shall have the same feelings toward us. We who are members of the body of Christ and who are servants of the Most High God have something very much in common. We have common goals. The main goal, of course, is pleasing our God and reaching heaven. Need a lot of help. We solicit each other's help. We should at least, because we need it. We need help, God's help first of all. But let us also understand that we can receive a great deal of strength and courage and help from each other. And for me, this has been a very encouraging meeting. And it has been good to have Wanda with me. Not every time does this happen, but when she can go of late, it has been such that she can. Our children are old enough to take care of themselves, I think, and we have been blessed by being able to be together more in meetings, efforts such as this. We appreciate the invitation which you have given us to be here. We trust that we have upheld what confidence you may have had in us by simply teaching and preaching to you the truth. You've been good listeners, and we have enjoyed it. If we should entitle our lesson this morning, tonight, if we should give it a title, it would simply be The World's Bid for a Man. In Daniel 1 verse 8 we read, "But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank." It is not our purpose this hour to preach a temperance sermon. We have selected the text from which to preach a sermon on Christian character, actually. And the text gives us a moment in a great man's life, a moment of decision, a moment upon which depended his afterlife. A few minutes have been all the time required for the destruction of many a character. That seems like a strong statement, but you know it's true. It takes years to build a character, but unfortunately only a few moments sometimes to tear it down or to destroy it. Every life is made up of crises, made up of decisions as to right and wrong, the proper and improper course to take. The road of life, we often say, seems to fork quite often for us. And what I have suggested a lot of times to my audiences is the fact that we need to make up our minds very quickly in life and to practice this very principle, that to have made up our minds to do the right thing, to take the right course when we come to the forks in the road. So having made up our mind to do that, we won't have to stand and deliberate which way to go. Having determined which is the way, it's very demanding that we take the best way and the quickest way that pleases our God in the quickest manner. Where you are and I am today, folks, depends upon what road you took where it forked. And my text puts a great man in the forks of a road with simply the right calling him in one direction, and almost every premium offered for a human character calling him in the other. It is impossible, I think, for us to appreciate the actions without a knowledge of the precise circumstances under which Daniel acted on this occasion. Circumstances have much to do with our actions. I don't mean to say that we should let any set of circumstances cause us to do wrong. But there are circumstances that certainly make some decisions more difficult and demanding. Let's look at a little history here before setting out on our sermon. Among the Judean hills was a walled city, the only city on earth where the true God was worshipped and his ordinances observed. Here his peculiar people were gathered. Here was where the temple was and where they held their services. And as I speak about this city, I know your mind goes directly to Jerusalem. There's another city that we call to your attention. A city over the plain of the Assyrian desert. A city which was built by the pride of man, actually. One of the greatest cities ever built, in fact. And it was built with the pride of man. A wall 300 feet high, 80 feet broad surrounded that city. And from 50 to 60 miles long is the estimate of that wall. You think about a wall such as that. Almost hard for us to contemplate. It was a tremendous city. Within this was the palace of the king. And when you look at the dimensions of it, as history gives it to us, that palace of the king was like almost a city within a city, a walled city, actually within a city. It was 7 miles around. Think of that. In the city that we're talking about tonight. Here was the king's little city inside. The most remarkable structure of the city was said to be the Tower of Bel, which was some 600 feet high. And it was built, of course, in respect that they had for a god of imagination, actually. They worshipped various gods. They built their temples. They erected their temples to them. And this was quite a place that we're talking about. Under the walls of this great city ran the river Euphrates. History today bears this out. The diggings of man, the explorations that even now is going on as far as Babylon is concerned is a very interesting thing. And what is found is that which runs true with the teachings of God's Word in regard to many, many things. Some of the things, of course, such as the dimensions that we gave you, are not important and are not really mentioned in God's book. But I was just showing you what kind of a city that it actually was. And what a great city it was. On one occasion, we see this nation. A great nation it was because of its power and strength. As their armies march out to capture another city, to take over another place, to bring in some more people, to have more captives to serve. And this time, it took them toward Jerusalem. They tear down its walls. They spoil its temple. They capture its golden vessels. They select from this conquered people the flower of the nation. Those individuals who had great abilities in various positions in that city. They were bright young men and beautiful young women. They were Jewish people. They took away the architects, the musicians, the artisans, the people who had some great respect in that city in their various fields, and they brought them back toward Babylon. As you look on this company of people tonight, as they are taken from their city, you look upon a very, very sad group of people. Very sad. We see them as they stand on the Judean hill overlooking their ruined city, and it had been ruined. It had been just almost leveled by these men. We can see the patriotic tear fall from their eye as they look back over that city and hear them mumble. And this is a psalmist David statement. O Jerusalem, if ever I forget thee, may my right hand forget her cunning, and my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. And we see them again as they come to the valley of the Mesopotamia, and see the great temple erected to heathen gods, and they see the city of Babylon. We see them as they approach the great wall, pass through her gates as captives to a heathen nation, or before the eyes of a heathen nation. And you see this little group as it gathers on the banks of the Euphrates River, with the curious Babylonians gathering to gaze upon them, to look upon them. We hear them shout this: play for us on your instruments, sing for us a native song. The people, God's people in Jerusalem, were talented people. They were good singers. They had talent also as musicians. They had been heard of even in this great city of Babylon. And the people gathered to see this strange little group of people as they were here on the banks of the Euphrates River, and they wanted to hear them sing. They wanted to hear them play. They wanted them to display their talents on the instruments and in song. And we see the tears that are upon their face as the melancholy words fall from their lips. And listen to this: how shall we sing the song of our gods in a strange land? And we see them as they stand there unwilling to sing and display their talents because they were so sad. It was not a good time to sing. It was not a good time to play on their instruments. It was not a good time for them now, because they felt like they were just on display. So they reneged on this. They did not sing. I sometimes stop long enough here to say to God's people, to all of us as God's people, every service that we have needs to be accompanied with a spirit and attitude that would cause us to love to sing, to love to teach, to love to hear God's Word taught, to be lifted up and brought closer to God. I remember quite a few places, quite a few times, when things to the contrary have existed in congregations where I've gone. I think of an extreme situation in Alabama, a congregation which had been there a long, long time. There were a couple of elderly men in that congregation who did all the teaching. And they found themselves, at least, I think they must have just arrayed themselves purposely against each other. They taught each Lord's Day. One of them taught one thing, and regardless of what it was, the people told me, the other one crossed him. And it was just a battle. It was just a seesaw going back and forth. Nobody had much of a spirit in that kind of a situation. Finally, and sometimes it's sad that we have to be pushed to take action, but we are. Finally, one of some of the groups, some of the people in this group decided, we're going to have to stop this. So they told them that no longer would they allow this to go on. They would not allow this kind of teaching, cross-teaching, to be done. These men were just interested in teaching, so eventually they dropped out. They just said they weren't interested at all. That's sad, very sad. But I don't care what the situation is. We ought to do our best every time we come together to create a situation to create a time where we can love to sing together and pray together. And there must be a joining of minds here to do that. And our hearts must be set upon God's Word and our knowledge of it and the doing of it. And when our hearts are there, we love to do what we have come to do. We love to sing and to pray and to teach and to go and to do all things God has required of us. So we place that here, we throw that in as a good measure, sometimes we say. Let's do that. And if there are things that need to be changed, then if it's scriptural, let's change them. Among this sad group of people that we're talking about here, standing on the banks of the Euphrates River, was the hero of our text, actually. And as he stands in this group of captives, his native city in ruins, among strangers in a strange country, in a strange land, with a strange religion, how dark the future seemed. I guess it would at least have seemed to him. In the midst of this gloom, a bright day comes to Daniel. The message of the king comes to him, a message that he has been selected as a candidate for one of the officers of the king's court. Been here for some time by this time. It didn't happen overnight. It happened as a result of Daniel's deportment and his actions in that strange city among these people. He was not unnoticed by men in position, and so he had been selected as one of the officers of the king's court and as a candidate to become an inmate of the wonderful palace of the king. Quite an honor to be placed upon this man. How this call must have thrilled him. I'm sure it did. As this wonderful position, so full of hope and light and honor and glory, opened up before him, how his ambitious heart must have leaped with joy within him. And we see him as he steps on the marble steps of the palace in the presence of which he had stood before as a slave, and now stands as one selected to serve in this position. We can see him as he is conducted to the magnificent apartment. If we may magnify the situation a little bit for you to cause you to see the situation, because he had been in something far different than this. Before he had properly adjusted himself, I would imagine, to this surrounding, the dinner hour came, and the king has arrived, and Daniel is presented with a portion of the king's dinner. The meat which he ate and the wine which he drank was set before him, and here Daniel meets the crisis of his life. Here is the time where the roads forked, because on that table was the king's drink, the king's wine that was set before him. And this meat also violates his religion. It's an unclean beast. It has been strangled. It has been offered to idols. The king wine, as I said, violates his religion. Daniel is in the palace as a candidate for office to be accepted or rejected here. Here's quite an important time. And the king's meat and the king's wine lie along the road of his acceptance. But to eat the king's meat and drink the wine violates the religion of his fathers. And here, as I said, is where the road forks. He looked upon this violation. I don't think it took him long to make his mind up at all. I can't see any time elapsing between the time that he recognized what was before him and what he had to do. I don't think he hesitated. I suggest to you it's a good thing for us to decide that when we get to the forks of the road that we don't hesitate, because you give the devil time enough to inject into your life and to your thoughts some bad things. You've decided before you get there. And this is important to all of you, young and old alike. Let all of us decide before we get to the forks, having to make a decision between right and wrong. We've already decided, if we know what's right, that's the road we're going to take. No matter how bumpy it looks, no matter how difficult it looks, no matter how it may take from us the things that we would seemingly desire, we're going to do what's right. And we will never make a mistake in the decisions that we make, if we have that kind of a determination. And Daniel did that. He put his foot down. The Bible says he purposed in his heart and expressed his purpose maintained his purpose. He said, I will not defile myself with the king's meat and the king's wine. And many a time, my friend, all of us, you and I, stand at that same point where the right lays on one side and the wrong lays on the other side, and we're called upon to make that decision. The wealth of office, the example of the great, the things which the world offers, and I think a lot of times the devil certainly is behind this, lay before us, and we have to decide which way are we going. What are we going to do? Perhaps there is at that point maybe just a little thing, a very small thing that would seem to call you in the right direction. You look at it and you can't see much advantages except you know what's right, but it seems like the devil is always able to set greater things before you at the time when you have to make that decision, and you are prone to be led in the wrong direction. Where you are tonight, where I am tonight, has been determined by what you did when you stood in the crisis of life. I do not believe tonight that there is any element of manhood or womanhood comparable to that which we express in the word purpose. Purpose. He purposed in his heart. May we explain it to you tonight as an everlasting, invincible determination to do or not to do. Of all the elements of character contributing to genuine manhood and bringing the greatest success in life, we believe this to be one of the strongest words that we could use tonight. I believe, and I think you share with me the same thought, that uncompromising purpose, to be or not to be, to do or not to do, to have or not to have, is an element of character outweighing all others, and more important maybe than anything that I could bring to your attention. But never did the devil make a stronger plea that he made for this man as was made for Daniel. Daniel, you're in a strange city. You're among strange people. You can't worship your God. You don't have a place to worship. You don't have a place to carry out what you know is God's law. Why would you hold on to anything at all? And sometimes we may be thrown into some situations which are similar to this. It may be impossible for us to maintain some of the things that we know is right. I don't mean to say that we do that which is wrong, but we may not be able to carry out altogether all of those things. But what we can do, we will do, regardless of what anybody else says. What we know is right, we will do. We will accomplish. But the devil made quite a bid for Daniel here. And many a time, young man, this has been made to you, this proposition that the devil made to Daniel. And doubtless many of us have listened to his weird argument far away from home, in which you were reared and brought up and far away from mother and father, who's taught you these principles and who's lived these principles for you, and who could have helped you in that decision were they present, but they were not. You stood as an individual who must make that decision for yourself. I said the other night, sometime after a while we all come to the place where mother and father cannot answer for us, cannot tell us what we need to know, or give us the answer that may be proposed by the strangers of truth and right. But if we have been taught properly, if we have been taught by our parents that which is right, and may God bless all of us tonight, our younger people, with that kind of something which is the best that you could have. May we have that teaching which is done in a Christian home, where mother's eye and mother's voice is that which has guided us and has put within us some of the strongest things that we could possibly have. Nothing could help us in life more than that. My feelings go out for those boys and girls who do not have that kind of a home, who do not have that kind of a father and mother. And I understand that for them to make the decisions that are made, that we made, having had those privileges, is not as easy. Does not mean that they must not make the right decision, but it is more difficult. So we say to you as parents, be very mindful of your responsibilities of teaching your children and of living before them as you ought to. Daniel was a very strong individual, as we said. We say about man, he is never better at heart at home than he is away from home. A man who is not religious everywhere is not truly religious anywhere. We're not just religious when the burning gaze of God is upon us. We're religious when it would seem that God may not be looking at us, or when we're not surrounded by those who are servants of the Most High God. We're religious. We're people who follow our convictions and do what's right, even if we're surrounded only by those who are of the world. A man who is dependent upon persons and surroundings for his proper conduct has no Christian character. Strong statement? It's true. It's true. A Christian character is as loyal in the dark as he is in the light. As loyal at home as he is away from home. As loyal when only, as I said, God's eyes are upon him, or as when the searching, critical gaze of all mankind are upon him. He's a Christian from principle and not from fear of criticism or from policy. I've always loved illustrations. And reading about the Harper brothers, who long ago left home, the old-fashioned home, to go to the city of New York, where they became the head of one of the great businesses of that city. They climbed, and as I tell you, the mode of travel tonight, they climbed in the old wagon, and the tearful mother came to the wagon and said, "James Harper, you're going to a strange city. Remember, your blood flows in your veins, and don't you disgrace it." And it said of him in his great career, he never forgot his mother. No, he never forgot his mother's God. There are only two of the Ten Commandments that are specifically emphasized. One is the one that commands our reverence for God, and the other our love and reverence for our parents. And you think about that. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for he will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. And the other, honor thy father and thy mother, that the days may be long in the land thy God giveth thee. And find me a man tonight who does not honor his father and his mother, and I'll find you a character with nothing to build on. The bottom is out, the foundation is gone. But as long as there is a sweet abiding love for parents, for father and for mother, there is a foundation that will hold you up. There is something that you can depend on. There's something that you can fall back on. And may I say to you young folk, wherever you go, however far you may get from the old home and from father and mother and the old family altar, do not forget them. Do not dishonor them. Do not defile yourself with the things that violate the religion of your father and mother. Stay with what you have been taught, if you have been taught the truth, and if you have had the privilege of watching the examples of good people at home. Daniel did just that. But there's another bid made for Daniel. Daniel, there's an honor in this. This is the road that leads to the official rank in the palace. You cannot afford to hesitate when great political advancement or any kind of worldly advancement, at least, would be offered you and is at stake. How many have sold out their God and their father and mother? The honor of the old home and the old their own character to be elected to maybe some political office or some kind of a position in some company, where they cannot uphold the characteristics that they have been taught in their home. Too many times, too many have given in and have not been able to survive and make the right decisions. We've forgotten where we got our teachings and what those teachings are. I again am reminded of this as I talk about the fact that not every boy and girl has the advantages that I am talking about tonight, which come with this kind of raising. And that makes me, as I said, sad. But I just am giving you some general statements, and I cannot help the fact that that what I'm saying is true regardless of what the circumstances may be. But it was a great bid the devil made when he spread out before captive Daniel the honors and the office of the king's court and the king's palace. But the devil makes another bid to Daniel. Daniel, it's customary for young men who are candidates for the king's court to eat of the king's meat and drink of the king's wine. All the customs of people. The chains of fashion. Where is there a man, a woman, who can stand up against, go clear against, actually, the customs of society? We are unconscious of our fearful slavery to custom. Custom makes a modest, pure girl feel at ease at the public reception under the burning eyes of lustful men, with herself a lot of times exposed too much. If she were accidentally exposed in such fashion as that, she would be very, very much shocked and ashamed. But custom makes girls feel at ease in the arms of a comparative stranger wheeling on the ballroom floor, when if the same position would be attempted in her private parlor, she would scream and would not allow it. It would not be done. But custom makes it all right. It's all right. Custom seems to make it all right for girls, men and women sometimes, boys and girls, to be improperly dressed, to attend the public places where they are improperly dressed, but because everybody else is dressed the same way and it's customary, it seems all right. But custom doesn't make it right. It's wrong for us to do wrong regardless of where we are and if we're in the middle of everybody who's doing wrong themselves. It's a mistake that we may think it's okay, because custom is a very strong chain that binds us, and we allow it to lead us in the wrong direction. But we like to see a character stop facing a custom that is bad, a custom that is wrong, a custom that violates the law of our God and what we've been taught in our homes, perhaps by our mother and our father. You like to see somebody who's strong enough to say, no, it's against my religion, it's against the teachings I've always received. I will not do this. I will not dress this way. I will not in any way do that which is wrong. Don't you like to see somebody who has that kind of strength? You certainly do. All of us are impressed with it. You know, there's a story that is told about a young man who in college was a very, very intelligent fellow. He liked to debate. He liked to perform in debates. He was noticed by a lot of people, but he got to drinking. And an older fellow who knew him went to him one day and said, why don't you make a man of yourself? Why don't you stop your drinking? You have great talents. Why don't you become the best you can in this field? And he went home that night and gave it some very serious thought and promised to himself and to his God that he would never drink again. This man advanced in the eyes of a lot of people in the world of politics in particular. And one day, and this is a true story, one day he was to take a message to the President of the United States. And he was invited actually by Mr. Adams to stay for another day, and they would have a dinner in his honor, and he could meet some of dignitaries of his time, and he agreed to that. Gladly he agreed to that. But the next day, when they sat down at the table to eat, they set the wine glasses, as was customary then and now, I would suppose. They set the wine glass before him. And the young man, without hesitating, said, "I'm sorry, Mr. President. I promised my God and some of my friends a long time ago that I would never drink again. I cannot drink with you today." You can almost imagine a lot of things that might have run through the mind of the president and the mind of the people who sat at that table. Who is this young man who would dare even think about not drinking with the president and with the dignitaries around that table? You know what happened? The president stood up and said, "All glasses toward the center. There will be no drinking today at this table in honor of a young man who a long time ago promised himself and his God that he wouldn't drink." You know who heard it? The newspaperman. It was front page news the next day. You know what he did? He said no. Loud enough, unashamedly, loud enough for the newspaperman to hear it, loud enough for all at the table to hear it. And though they may have thought it rather strange on his part at the time, they really felt that here was a boy who had some principles and was worthwhile. He gained, as the years went by, in the attention and eyes of others in politics, and was elected into a certain position, which I have forgotten exactly what, but it was a position of honor. But as I said, it was a true story, and was actually one which was reported in the papers the next day. And that really always thrilled me to read about it, to think about it. And how we love the man who can stand in the face of a wrong custom, even among the great, and say no. No. I read a story similar, not quite like this, but a story which makes us all feel good to see somebody stand up and do the right thing when it seems like it's almost too much difficult to do. He was a young man who aspired to go to college. And this story is reported also to be true, also to be factual. And he did not have the money. He lived with his mother, and she did not have much money. But he was determined to go, and so he got enough for entry at least, and worked his way through college. The story that I read told what he did, the various menial tasks that he performed to make his way through college. His mother would send him with him each day his lunch. There was at the end of the last year of his college, and he had performed so well that he was entered into the contest of this. It was an oratorical contest, and he had a great deal of ability, evidently, to make speeches. And each year this was done. And this year he was to be one of the contestants. And after everybody was through with their speeches, the votes were taken by the judges, and it was announced that this young man had won it. The custom was that the winner of that, and it happened to be the Robertson oratorical contest, the winner of that contest was to take a little chain which had a little medallion type deal on it, and take it down off of the stage and into the audience and place it around the neck of his girlfriend, his best girlfriend. And so that on that occasion, everybody was watching. When it had been announced that he had been the winner, everybody was watching. Where would he go? What would he do with that? His mother had come that night. She had taken her seat at the back of the audience, dressed in a very, very plain gingham dress, one she had made for the occasion herself. Very, very simple in comparison to what was mostly seen in that audience. And the young man was watched as he made his way down the long aisle to the very back seat of that auditorium and spoke loudly enough for the people to hear, "Mother, this is yours. Had it not been for you, I could never have gone to college. I could never have made it." And it is said as he made his way back to the stand, there was not a dry eye in the house. Why? Because here was a young man who did what was right. Didn't follow the customary thing. He did what was right, what he felt was right, and what was the best for him to do. And certainly it was on that occasion. And we applaud him for doing that. We applaud anybody who goes against the customs of their time and against what would seem right in the eyes of most people and does what is really right and what is the best for him. Well, there's another bid made for Daniel here. Daniel, you don't have much of a chance of making a living. You've got an opportunity here where you have all you want to eat. You're going to be in the king's court. You can eat from his table, and you're going to be provided with all that you need to eat. You won't have to worry about another paycheck. Well, you know, sometimes we let money get a little close to us, too close to us, in fact. There's nothing wrong with money. Nothing wrong with this material thing as long as we use it properly and as long as we don't misuse it. But sometimes we let it get too close to us. Did you ever hear that old expression, or that old illustration actually, made by an old preacher, and it's been used by a lot of others since then? He said, and he took out of his pocket a couple of silver dollars. He said, and he held them up like this. And you can almost see him. I wish I had the silver dollars. It'd be a little more impressive, I guess. But you can almost see this as he held them out here, and he said, as long as I keep my money far enough away from me, I can see the things that are important to me in life. He was in a congregation where his mother was there, and his friends were there, and his wife was there, and he said, as long as I hold that money out there far enough away from me, I can see my mother, I can see my brethren, I can see my wife, I can see my Bible. Did you know I can see my Bible? And I don't have to, I know it's just within vision. I'd have to look down at it to read from it, but I can see my Bible here. As long as he kept it, he made this illustration. As long as I keep it that far away from me. And he kept getting closer and closer and closer. And he said, the closer I let my money get to me, the more I blind myself to the things that are really important, and the less I can see that really count. And then he put them right up against his eyes. And he said, when my money gets too close to me, I can't see any of these things. I can't see anything but money. We should never let our money, our material things, get too close to us. There's nothing wrong with money. There's nothing wrong with material possessions. But we hold them out there far enough away from us that it never blinds us to the things that really are important and to those people who are really important, and never blinds out God in our life. We make the biggest mistake that we possibly could make if we should even think about letting this happen to us. Daniel had many things put before him, and he was approached with, I'm sure, with this very thing time and again. You are refusing a lot of honors and a lot of important things to refuse this position that you may have, that you're being asked to take, or at least if you want to take, you can have. But Daniel was very strong in his convictions. Daniel did not forget Jerusalem. He did not forget his father and mother. He did not forget God. He did not yield to the custom of the palace, though it were to eat eat the king's meat and to drink the king's wine. And the devil wouldn't let him alone. He kept approaching him with various offers and various things that would be appealing to him. And Daniel was very, very determined that he would not give in. We're thankful for that. But finally, after quite a period of time, there were men who were continually watching him. And they were trying to find some way to get rid of him. They were jealous of him, actually. How did he find his way into a position they surely felt that they should have? And he was not the right nationality as far as they were concerned for a man like him to have this important place. Daniel was a praying man. And 3 times a day, as you remember, he turned his face toward the city of Jerusalem from his window and prayed to his God. There were some things that he could not do, but what he could do, as I suggested, he did. We are told by historians, whether this be true or not, I could not say. But probably this is true. Just as sometimes minorities and certain nationalities they gather themselves together to a great deal in a certain place in the city. It is said by some historians that this was true with the Jews, and that they were allowed some privileges and some things that they could do together, and that a good many of them would remind each other of those responsibilities that they could keep, and they kept them together and helped each other along the way. But Daniel did this, and his enemies saw it. They saw a way to do something about the position that he had, and maybe to gain it for themselves, and so they made him up quite a deal. They appealed to the pride of the king. That nobody could pray to his God for 30 days now. Nobody could honor their God. Nobody could honor anybody but the king. And the king, without too much, perhaps certainly not enough thought, he let this go through. He signed that decree. It was a very important thing for a man to keep his word back in that day and time. And the king, in fact, it was impossible, having done it, as far as the law structure was concerned, to go back on it. Made him very sad when he found out what was happening here. And the fact that he really had been tricked by some of his closest men, servants, that he had signed that decree, but he couldn't go back on it. And so Daniel kept on praying, and the time come for this decree to go into effect, and Daniel kept on praying. He didn't let anything stand in his way of doing what God wanted him to do, nor what he decided that he would maintain in his life. He kept on praying. And when he knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his window being open in his chambers toward Jerusalem, he prayed. Prayed where everybody could see. Everybody knew what he was doing. And what a wonderful moment in a man's life, when he read his own doom in the law of the king, and then walks deliberately to the open window. Somebody said, it looks to me like he could have foregone that privilege for 30 days. He could pray anyway. He could have got in the closet. He could have hid himself. He could have still prayed. But Daniel was not about to give in. Daniel was not afraid. Not afraid. Have to give him a lot of thanks here for setting this example before us. He kneels down and prays as calmly as if there were no lion's den. And he is reported to the king, and the king is very sorrowful, as you remember, for he honored this noble young man. But according to the law, which could not be changed, Daniel was taken to the cave, not cowering, not downcast, but he walked toward the lion's den like a man. And I've always said here, that many a man had been taken to the lion's den, screaming and kicking and objecting and doing all he could to keep from going. But this day, they took a man. They took a man. He was a man who knew that God could deliver him. But he was a man also that knew if he died, he still would die in God's favor, and he was not afraid. When the man had thrown him into the lions, then don't you imagine they listened to hear the lions tear him, but they heard not a noise. The great God had gone before them with an omnipotent hand and had made the lion's frame passive, peaceful, and God stroked their heads. We speak in a figure. He stroked their heads and ordered them to lie down in peace and wait the coming of His servant. And when the hour for evening prayer came, Daniel, as he walked in darkness in the cavern, no doubt studied for a moment. Maybe he kind of had to get his bearing for a little while and find out exactly which direction is Jerusalem. But I can almost believe fully. I can almost see it visually. I can almost see Daniel as he has decided that's where Jerusalem is. Amidst these lions who had been tamed by the God of heavens, who prayed again to the God above. Toward Jerusalem. And what a picture to the doubting old world to see Daniel before the king's decree, in the face of the lion's den, kneeling before the open window toward Jerusalem. What a picture to see this man in the dark caravan surrounded, or cave rather, surrounded by fierce lions, but really in the pavilion of the great eternal God. Kneeling in the darkness was his face, with his face as far as he could tell for sure, the best he could tell, toward Jerusalem. At the hour of retirement, perhaps Daniel pillowed his head on the shaggy mane of the lion, over whose mouth rested the hand of his God, and slept sweetly through the night. Got some conjecture here? Yes. But you have to realize that some of these things had to happen. Not told us exactly, but some of them had to happen. Before the dawn of the morning, the king was early at the cave, half suspecting the God which would be with such a man, and down into the mouth of the cave he cried, O Daniel, is that God whom thou servest continually able to deliver thee? And out of that cave, out of that lion's den, came the answer, O King, live forever. He is able. We sing that song sometimes. Our God is able to deliver us. We just don't trust in it enough. We just don't let it be the nearest and dearest to us as we ought to. Bear in mind tonight, He's still the same God, with the same power, with the same interest in any man, any woman, any boy and girl who put Him first in their life and will call upon Him. He's the same God. He's not changed. He's unchangeable. He will protect us. Somebody says, but eventually Daniel died. That's true. That's true. All men do. We shall. Every man shall die. But every individual who lives as Daniel lives until the end and puts his God first in his life will never be sorrowful about that, and shall be taken home and to heaven itself, and there to live eternally. When God says, I will be with thee, that means He will be with us, for us, whatever actions whatever our actions demand of Him. Brother, sister, tonight, do not fear to throw your life on the great arm of God Almighty. Don't fear to do that. To throw your business and your all upon the great arm of God, and fear not the world, fear not man, fear not the devil, only fear God and do right. And our God shall deliver us. He shall. He will. We know that. We're persuaded of that. And I hope everyone tonight, as we have slowly made our way through this sermon, have listened to some of the more important parts of it, and to have have made our will stronger to be a good, true servant of His, regardless of what anybody else does or says, regardless of what the world and man may require of us and may demand of us or try to demand of us. We will stick with God. We will stay with Him. And if we die as a faithful servant of Him because we have made a decision that would cause man to put us to death, we shall die. But God is able to deliver. He shall be there. He will not leave us alone. He will cause us to be victorious. There are a lot of things that could be said about this. You remember Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Who would not bow down to the image, and who were brought to this furnace heated 7 times hotter, and facing that, what did they do? Well, they said, our God can deliver us. We know that. We're convinced of that. But whether He does or whether He doesn't, we're not going to bow down to the graven image. Whether we live or we die. If we die at the hands of the king and his servants, that's all right. Our God will deliver us. The point is certainly well taken by all of us, that regardless of what happens to us, in sweet obedience to God, sweet deliverance will come. And that's our lesson tonight. We hope that you will remember it and you will think about it in your own life, in your own conduct before God and before your fellow man. We're not losers as Christians. No, we're not. We're winners every time. We will always be. And with that great armor always upon us, we shall win every fight. We shall win every conflict, and sweet will be the deliverance. I hope that all of us shall so live and conduct ourselves that when it comes time for us to leave this stage of action, to lay our armor down to war no more, that we shall lay down in peaceful sleep and slumber in the arms of our God, who has promised us this sweet deliverance. The lesson is yours. The invitation is now extended. If you're present having never obeyed the gospel, you can certainly do so tonight. God's plan is simple, clear and plain. We've talked about it during this meeting, and we know what it takes to be saved. You know what it takes to be saved. If you've never obeyed that gospel, we bid you come taking the steps essential. Or if you're present as a child of God, but having made a mistake, having strayed, then come back to Him in the appointed way. Thank God for that second law of pardon. And thank God that we may restore ourselves to His care by coming back to Him in the appointed way. Here's a point that I give to you tonight. If we walk in the light as He is in the light, we have fellowship one with another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, His Son, cleanses us from all sin. You may well note that the word cleanseth here in 2 John. The word cleanseth is an active word, a continual process. We obey the gospel. By our obedience, we're baptized. It's a form of the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. Our sins are removed. But we have a life which is continually affected by our association with God. If we walk in the light as He is in the light, the blood of Christ continues to cleanse us from all sin. That does not mean that we can be rebellious. That does not mean that we can just live any kind of way we want to, and God will still save us because we once obeyed the gospel. But it does mean that if we maintain that spirit which prompted us to obey the gospel to begin with, to put God first in our lives, and to maintain a way of life that's suitable to Him and His Word, that process will continue in our life and take care of those sins. Now, and this perhaps is a little much to really introduce right here at the end, but I don't think so. I think that you can plainly see it and already agree with it. But we sometimes talk about, or we sing it sometimes. I mentioned this, and you may look at it and think about it yourself. I'm not trying to introduce something new to you, but we sing sometimes, "Forgive the secret sins that I may not see." Well, that seems a little strange. That God would forgive us of sins in our life that we just don't name out and say, God, I'm sorry for. But if we have a mind, a spirit to be obedient to God regardless of what, and if anything comes up in our life, we have this capacity, we have this mental capacity, we are using it, that we will straighten it out, we will do what's right. We ask the question, with that attitude, with that disposition, how does this fare with you? Is God going to take care of us? It's a question I ask. You know, one of the things, when I had my first heart attack in 1980, and that was the days when we stayed in intensive care for a long time and weren't put out about the second or third day, as we are sometimes now. But for 12 days I stayed in intensive care, and there were a lot of times when we were above in our mental capacity the medicines and so on, and of course a lot of times that we could pray. And one of the verses which seemed to be so near to me was that very verse, and I thanked God for it. And there was that attitude in my life and in my prayers that if there be something in my life that I may not have seen, if there's something there that would keep me from making heaven my home, if I should not make it through, that the blood of Jesus Christ would